What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Recon by Fire, where I'm going to be breaking down my most recent tournament in a 3-part series covering each round per episode. The goal is to essentially share my experiences so we can both benefit from them and improve as 40k players. So without further ado, let's jump on into the list. Pride Nexus has proven to be a very action-heavy kind of mission standard, and so I began my journey taking less big knights and more armigers to have that economy of action to be able to shoot, cover multiple objectives, and perform all these actions for secondaries, so we're not just a primary-based army. So I started off with Canis Rex. Absolutely no reason not to take him. He has a decent amount of shooting and a absolute truck in melee. He is fantastic in multiple avenues, to include the fact that he is our one way of CP generation by giving us a free stratagem both on our turn and our opponents, which is absolutely phenomenal. You do have to be careful with him. He can go down, but on that note, the fact that Sir Hector pops out makes him significantly more resilient. So the only thing I would say is whenever you're running him and you see him either being the focus fire of the army or getting low on wounds where they could potentially take him out, make sure you position him in a place where he's nearby a wall. So when Sir Hector pops out, he can hide behind a wall and not get immediately charged or shot at. Next up is the Sororitas Knight Atrapos, one of my favorite knights. He is fantastic at 25 wounds, T12, 12 inches of movement, and then most importantly, a 5-up invul all the time. That is fantastic, making him just a little bit more resilient than some of the other knights. I like him because he's a jack of all trades. Obviously, he's fantastic into the mirror match and solid against vehicles, right? He's got good shooting and he's got enough melee where if they try to lock him up, he's not going to do too bad. He's still able to shoot out of it and wounding on 3s because he gets the +2 to hitting on vehicles. And then he can melee whatever he's in melee with, especially if he's already on the point. He can do actions and still shoot, which is awesome as well, getting back some of that action economy we were talking about earlier. And his weapon systems are great. They do lack in shots sometimes, so he's not fantastic into infantry, but he's not a pushover either. Next up is the meat and potatoes of this list, which is 4 Warglaives. It was initially 5, but I dropped down to 4 due to points. And these guys are great. It's probably the most aggressive model that we have because of the fact that the thermal spear damages a lot of vehicles very aggressively. Has 12 inches of movement and it has some melee. So this thing can really pack a punch and is not too difficult to trade up when it comes to points. So they are fantastic. I think every army has them. I would happily run 6 if I could. Next up are the 2 Helverins. I brought these guys because having a little bit of range shooting is solid. Their guns are strength 9 with a flat 3 damage, which is absolutely fantastic. -1 AP is not great, but you can kind of mitigate a little bit of that by adjusting your line of sight and capitalizing on Squire's duty, giving them an additional AP. But I mean, flat 3 damage is flat 3 damage. It works well into things that half damage. It works well into things that -1 damage. And it just straight up picks up a lot of units or models because of that flat 3 damage. So I think they're great. The fact that you can really hinder them a lot by tying them in combat is a bit of a problem. So I am not the biggest fan of them as I am the Warglaive, but I do think they're still a solid inclusion in the list. First allied unit we are taking is the Calidus Assassin. I've been running her since the very beginning that I could, and I've continuously been impressed with her. I've gotten better and better the more games I play with her. She is difficult to play. I don't think she is an auto-include for everyone because of the simple fact that she is tricky. She is very squishy, and you have to position her. She's even more difficult to play now because of the aura vect versus just using her strictly for secondaries. So she kind of plays both roles, right? Sometimes you're going to lift her up and you're going to use her for secondaries, and sometimes you're going to bring her in and stage her aggressively behind a wall where you can protect her with more armigers and then use that Vect bubble. In this tournament, she generated a ton of value, forcing my opponent to pay 2 CP for stratagems and just straight up negating some because they didn't have the CP to do it. So I think she is a fantastic inclusion at 100 points. Next up, we have the Navigator. I play Grey Knights as well as Imperial Knights, and so anytime my opponent has infiltrators or any kind of a 12-inch no-fly bubble, it is extremely powerful and hindering for me. And so I understand the power, and being able to have access to one ourselves in the form of a navigator is fantastic. I've wanted to try this guy out. He has a 4-up invul, but only T3, 3 wounds. So he's not super sturdy, but the bubble does allow him to be semi-protective if the terrain layout is accommodating and he's able to position himself inside of a building where the bubble prevents any deep strikes from getting line of sight of him immediately. He does have a battle shock test he could do at the beginning of the shooting phase and then potentially do D3 or 3 mortal wounds to something. So it's not nothing, but he's really there for the 12-inch bubble. I decided for my last 85 points to go with a subductor squad. I think this squad is extremely impressive for the points. For 85 points, you're getting 11 bodies, with 10 of them having a 3-up, 4-up. So they are here strictly to screen in the early game, and then later in the game start doing secondaries and potentially move block the opponent if I need him to keep Canis or my Atrapos protected. Let's get into the gameplay. Round 1 was against Justin Muhisin, playing his Adepta Sororitas, and what a fantastic player he is. This is the second time I've played against him, and he's very methodical, very friendly. We had a good time challenging each other, and it was a fantastic game. As far as deployment goes, nothing too special to speak about here. I just tried to spread out my firepower to adjust to what he was doing. Once I ID'd that he was placing most of his anti-tank on one side of the board, I positioned Canis as far as way to try to bridge the gap across that big opening, and then the Atrapos on the center, so if needed I can adjust him through the building to be able to get line of sight on any of the attacks he exposed. This is the first time I play Sisters after they have their codex released, so I wasn't really familiar with the army except for the fact that the Castigators can start stacking AP, and that Morven Vol absolutely smashes any vehicle they go into, which he deployed them directly in the middle in that gray building. So I had to be cautious of that. I do deploy defensively because I personally do not feel like my knights are as tanky as people are led to believe. And because I have seen the firepower that Justin is able to put out, I deployed fairly defensive. And of course, I ended up going first, which has been the usual. I literally can't remember the last time I've gone second. To that note, it is something that I need to work on because in Pariah Nexus, bot end of game scoring is definitely a huge swing. And so my first mistake this match was that I had a very cagey and defensive turn 1. Whereas in Scorched Earth, because the player that goes second can burn an objective and score at the end of the game, it forces the player that goes first to be very aggressive and start scoring primary as soon as possible. So for this report, I went ahead and took a photo at the end of every round. That way I didn't slow down my gameplay or annoy my opponent, but I still have a way of reviewing the game later and sharing that with you. This is the end of round 1. Justin decided not to scout forward the Exorcist and keep it back where it was, keeping it hidden from my guys. So I decided to have a pretty conservative round 1 since I drew Sabotage and Recover assets. Pretty easy. I decided to keep everything in cover, no reason to expose myself, and I was kind of daunted by this giant open gap here. So I did not deploy Canis yet, and that's why he stayed hidden. The 2 Warglaves that were completely hidden from everything moved forward, one touching the objective, scoring the primary there, the other recovering assets, and then you can't see her, but right in this corner here is the Kaldis Assassin that is just outside of my deployment zone, as you can tell here, and that allowed me to sabotage safely with her. So that's going to give us a nice 3 points at the end of the turn because, again, I didn't feel comfortable bringing Canis out there for just 3 points and then having like a Castigator and Morven Vol come out. Again, not really sure at Morven Vol's power, and then of course there's the Penitent Engine up there. He drew Assassination and Cleanse, so Triumph of St. Catherine moved over to this objective as well as the Penitent Engine. She performed the Cleanse action. The Seraphim moved forward, just towing on the center objective, performing the Cleanse action as well. Easy secondary for them. They gave up Assassination. No big issue there because, of course, the only 3 characters, Kaldis and the 2 Big Knights, are nice and hidden. Took some pop shots into the Red Warglaive as it being the only one they could really see, And luckily I made some solid, I rotate ion shields and made some solid saves, and I think it looks like it only took 4 wounds down to 8. So not super safe, but it happens. I think he just ended up not using a miracle dice, or I rolled good on the Feel No Pains. One of the two, because he had some fantastic miracle dice this game. But that was it. Pretty easy, straightforward round 1. Things are pretty even here. Again, I do want to state that I do feel like I should have probably been a little more aggressive, but on this primary, you can only score 10 anyways, and I felt like he didn't have access to be able to kill this Warglaive in 1 turn, unless I rolled really poorly. So I was good there, but there is definitely an argument to kind of push forward here and force some of his stuff out, because of that, he really only exposed there and was able to keep all 3 of his tanks protected. For round 2, I drew Assassination, which was going to be a CP, and Extend Battle Line nice and easy. We already had that thanks to having our home objective with the Navigator, as well as this Warglaive here. No need for a Battle Shock. So here I decided I can't be conservative any longer, and I have to go out there. And so fortunately, he did hide these Arcoflagellants for his turn very well for Sabotage. I had no clean line of sight with them. So that unfortunately was going to pop off. And the Warglaives decided to stay put because I did not want to expose them, feeling I had enough shooting to take out everything here in the middle, and I was worried about the Rapid. So I kept them where they were at. They did Rapid in as we expected and moved in this giant squad of Seraphim, which he said wasn't going to do a lot of damage, but they actually packed quite a bit of a punch. I did go ahead and move out all my guys so I could have line of sight with my Armigers, willing to sacrifice 150 points to bring his tanks out. So I cleaned up the Exorcist squad, and what I could fired at the Seraphim squad in the center. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to wipe them, and so they were able to reactive move here, and a fantastic move on his part where he was able to move block me and really pin down all these Armigers from pushing forward. Yes, these could still go up the middle this way, so it wasn't a complete pin, but it did prevent me from moving in this way to kind of get the jump on these Castigators back here. And as you can see, it clumped me up a little bit, but yeah. So because I didn't have any good targets, I wasn't prepared to expose the Atrapos. So the Atrapos still stayed. Well, he's touching the point now. So actually, I think I did expose him to take out the Exorcist or something. But he's out in the open. Thankfully, because of all these buildings, they still don't have clear line of sight. And then Canis is staging for the next turn, coming through the wall to get additional line of sight. Maybe he's the only one that fired into the Seraphim here. Expecting to charge the Arcoflagellant. So, because I remember that thing didn't do anything. I straight up picked that up. So that might be next turn. But yeah, so round 3, we draw behind enemy lines. Nothing anywhere near it. Ironically, funny story, I did plan on having 1 Warglaive in reserve, but when I was deploying, I put it on the board not thinking. So I actually didn't have anything for behind enemy lines, but I think I was going to be stuck anyways because you can barely see it. I forgot about them, but there's actually a squad of Seraphim back here behind this building as well. And obviously, as you can tell here, it'd be kind of tough to sneak in a Warglaive on this side. So I tried to move, I think I'm missing a picture is what might have happened. So I moved up my 2 Warglaives here to try to prevent as many of those Canonesses from coming in this building and trying to strike down my guys. I had the one closer to the wall begin to burn the objective, preparing to like shift my offensive to the north here, take over the center one, and then pull out the St. Catherine off of this one. I did Overwatch with, or as you can tell, these 2 Halverns fired into the Canoness squad that was hiding in this corner. I killed some of them, but not enough. And between the 2 Arco, or the 2 Penitent Engines that were here doing sabotage, and the Canonesses that came in through here, I unfortunately lost both of them, which wasn't great. I did move up my Subductor squad. I should have probably, honestly, positioned them a little bit better to block this off. I think I moved them as far forward as I could to get additional shots on the Seraphim squad that was here move blocking me. But I think I could have probably consolidated them a little bit better to block from the Penitent Engines from getting in completely. But I was a little too worried about this corner here. So I paid the price and lost both of them. which was unfortunate. But such is life. I do make a mistake here I want to point out. The other squad that was back here, it was a squad that was move blocking. I killed them in shooting. And then there was a squad here that I didn't shoot at because I knew they were going to be a little soft. They came around the corner. That's this squad here with the two of them. And I didn't really allocate any resources to them minus my subductor squad. And so I decided to leave them in combat to try to kill some of them, which was the wrong answer. And it worked out. It ended up not paying the price. I should have actually fallen them back or pulled them out of combat because I had a couple here that would have been out of engagement range from everything. That way I had the ability to charge next turn or shoot or do some things. I just have never played with them before, so I was hoping they would be able to pick up that Seraphim squad. They unfortunately did not. That was a mistake because I did get actions next turn, but it ended up not mattering because they failed their battle shock test, so they weren't going to be able to do the actions anyways. This Warglaive got wounded by the Castigators, but they did not kill it, so I pulled it back to try to have an additional action monkey to do some work if I needed to and can still shoot into these guys. And then the Atrapos went ahead and came forward because I knew at this point Morvenval was just sitting there. We're starting to go late in the game and it's close. I mean, we're still within 5 points of each other the entire game. But the fact that he had such a powerful unit just sitting there not doing anything worried me. So I started to move forward here. But yeah, losing 3 Warglaives at this point is a little rough, but that's the way it goes. At least I have my really big firepower. I should have been more aggressive with Canis here as well, but you'll see my strategy kind of worked going next round, but unfortunately it was a little too late. I should have done this a lot sooner. I would like to add that the Caldus Assassin remaining in that corner did some work this turn. I managed to eat up all his CP, a total of 6 in one turn, or one round, I should say, because he didn't have a reason to spend it anywhere else, and he was just stockpiling up to this point. And so he burned 3 stratagems all within range of the Caldus, which was nice. She did some work there for sure. Round 4, we get Cleanse and Storm Hostile Objective. So that Seraphim squad I mentioned earlier that was back here, this is when they came out front and threw me off. I was like, oh, so you do have guys there. So, but I essentially moved my Helvrin here in the center, touching this middle objective, moved the Atrapos over here so I can get line of sight on these Castigators, and tried to start taking out his anti-armor. Unfortunately, it came down a little awkward on shooting, where the Castigator that was, the Castigator that was here was at like 2 wounds remaining. And so it made it awkward because I think the Atrapos could have picked up one of these easily by itself. But I decided I wanted to split fire to try to limit the firepower that was going down the center at Canis. And so the Singularity Cannon killed the one that was at 2. And the Las Cutter with more shots went into this one here because the fact that he had Miracle Dice that could just auto-save when he wanted to means that I wanted to have more shots going into it. And I wanted to leave this one on the objective so I had a better chance at charging it and kind of stealing this objective away from him. Because again, this is round 4. It's really close. I need to start kind of figuring out how to steal points from him because then we understood that he was going to be able to burn an objective at the end of the turn. So that was this game plan. I did lose the Helvrin here. As you can tell, Morvenval came out, shot everything into the Atrapos, and brought him down to 4 wounds remaining. So almost one-shotted the Atrapos, and I rotated, but thankfully it pulled off and survived. Actually, no, I think... Yes, I did rotate, because I had the Helvrin here that was going to make it to where they couldn't charge Canis. So I did rotate here, but they did kill the Helvrin, and so this is awkward. I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was a big hoopla here in this objective, as you remember. I moved the Caldus Assassin up. Oh yeah, there you go. See, so there's the Voidsman, the Subductor squad that was battle shocked, which ended up hurting me. I moved the Caldus forward to potentially perform actions and help getting stuff down. I think she actually took down the Canoness on her own, but everyone else shot into the Penitent Engines and killed them. So, oh yeah, now I remember what happened. So I had a Helvrin here, right, that was wounded. I had moved up the Calidus, and then both Penitent engines deadly demised. So they killed the 2 remaining Seraphim. It killed 2 of my dudes, and then took the assassin down to 2, which was it makes a difference, and you'll see here, which is quite funny. So that's why all of a sudden there's nothing here, because yeah, it was just a giant explosion and everything died, and glorious. Calidus start to burn the objective, and the Trapos cleanse is what I think I ended up doing. I got 4 on cleanse. How did I cleanse this? Oh, yeah, that's right, because of the Helverin. Yep. So the Atrapos and the Helverin cleansed, and then I think I had this Calidus start burning. It's been a minute. Sorry, guys. So, yeah, they moved forward. They drew no prisoners and storm hostile objectives. So, obviously, Morven Vol picking up that unit and then getting there, scored them both of those. But that's the end of round 4. So, bottom of round 5, end of game. We drew Containment and Overwhelming Force, which were fantastic draws for us, because the damaged Warglaive and Canis was able to pick up the Morven Vol squad, the Numdums in the center, that managed to give me Overwhelming Force pretty easily. And I think we kind of talked through this one, because we were trying to figure out the points, so we were talking through it at this point. I think I picked up a tank, but then he fired at me, because remember, he has bottom of turn. So this guy down here, the 1 remaining Subductor squad, Haragai and the Navigator come out, because now killing him doesn't do anything. Like, he's already spent Assassinate or whatever, and I need to get Containment. So these 2 are going to Containment for 6. I got Overwhelming Force for 5. And then if you notice, oh, I guess the Calidus is still in here. But we talked through it. So I think I had her burning this time. But long story short, it was going to be, I think, a 3-point game or something like that at the end, because he was able to burn. And the 2 Castigators shot into the Atrapos and managed to kill it. And we were like, all right, cool. And then finally, I got a Deadly Demise, which was enough to kill my Calidus, which means it did not burn the objective. And yeah, so I didn't get the 5 points for that at the end of the game, which would have been 10 points, I believe, because for burning and then for scoring or whatnot. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of humorous. But that's where the game ended. Ended 82-95. Again, fantastic playing against him. Great player. We were talking through things. We were, just strategizing and stuff. He was really friendly. Hey, if you do this, I can do that and whatnot. So it was a great time. I really enjoyed it. I think the outcome was probably still going to be in his favor, just because of his skill and experience with the sisters, as well as just he had a solid pool of dice. Like, I mean, he had 4 up, 5 up, 6 ups, aplenty. Especially since I gave him kind of 2 turns where he didn't really need to use any of them, so he could just stockpile them. And so it's really powerful. He doesn't have as many meltas and stuff to like really get in there and do 6 damage, but the fact that he was able to just negate any shooting I had, right? If my Singularity Cannon went in there, was going to threaten to 1 shot, he could just auto 6 it or whatnot. So it was a great game. Yeah. So I had a lot of fun. Really happy with this setup, honestly. I think I might have just said that, but if I think I played a little more aggressive, forced them to come out, I think I could have kept it even closer versus leaving this squad there. But again, I mean, it didn't entirely fail, just because of the fact that the only thing that his biggest punch did was kill a Helverin and then wound the Atrapos. And wounding the Atrapos does affect it, but not as much, because it still has that +1 to vehicles. So I was still hitting these guys on 3s, which is what I was looking for. So yeah, and maybe that's what I did. Maybe I was going to charge it. No, because they were shot at the end of it. I'm not sure. But yeah, we figured out that me charging here wasn't going to do anything to steal the point and whatnot, but that's where it was. So yeah, I hope you guys learned a little something. Trying to keep this kind of brief, not go too deep into stuff, especially since I'm not the most skilled player, but sharing my thoughts and ideas with you guys so you can get better with me. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if this is something you're interested in, and I'll keep doing it. If not, then hey, I'll save some time and just keep putting out those short form battle reports. But until next time, as always, friends, happy gaming.